now I want to change focus again.
Okay.
When we talked in the next room, we talked about developments in society, the pro bono development, social engagement, and profit companies, and that we, I guess, all of us somehow agree we need a new economic model.
Yeah.
And but nobody has the answers.
Yeah.
And you described an example to me where you worked with a pro bono.
No, it's research I'm doing.
Can you expand a bit on
well,
that?
I think you're talking about what's called the Northwest Center in Seattle, where they are an agency that provides services to people with intellectual developmental disabilities. But they've launched on this set of this whole other way of being in the last 5-6 years, where they've become sort of a social enterprise conglomerate. They're running now 6 or 7 different businesses, each of which is both commercially successful, but also hires large numbers of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So they have this joint mission of kind of a both and. And so I started studying them a couple of years ago, thinking I was going to learn about how do these supervisors supervise these people with intellectual developmental disabilities. And I learned a few things, but not a whole lot that wouldn't just be good supervision, period. But what I started to become fascinated with is, how does this organization manage the contradictions of a business logic and a social welfare logic, and do both and, you know?
Business means making money. What's not my...
Yeah, you know, like one of the areas where they had the hardest time changing was they run what's called a custom assembly packaging business. So they do this business where, say, Starbucks gets 100,000 tea sets from China and they're not properly packaged. They'll send them over to them. They'll repackage it, send it back, right? And not only that, they'll do it on time and it'll be perfect. Starbucks loves them, right? And so the guy who's running that business is saying, look, as a business, we have to do things on time. We have to meet our customer expectations and all those sorts of things. Now that business began as what we call a sheltered workshop, where they would do custom assembly packaging for customers, but they didn't really care about the customer. And a lot of the work was shoddy, and it was really focused on providing employment to people who were considered unemployable. And a lot of the work was just busy work to keep them busy, and was kind of meaningless. And so they transitioned from this to that. Now they went through a lot of fights internally. You know, the people who've been running the sheltered workshop are going, these people are not capable, you can't pressure them like this to meet deadlines, you know. And the guy who's trying to make it into a business says, listen, this is the way it has to be this way, or this business isn't around and they're not going to have it. And so they got to where they are now. And there are all these potential conflicts and contradictions between running a business and being profitable, meeting customer needs and that, and being a social welfare agency where you're working with people who, have extreme neurodiversity in the way they think and what they're capable of and incapable of, and how that is difficult sometimes. So, and what I found is, so far, we're right in the beginning of this research. Got about 40 hours of interviews over the last year, and we're just starting to code the data. Is the closer we got to the front line, the less people experience this as a conflict. Like in interviews, I would start asking them about how do you experience that, and they wouldn't even know, they wouldn't make sense of the question. I would have to give them examples before they could even respond to it. They did not experience what they were doing on a day-to-day basis, managing customer needs and managing these people, as in any way contradictory, which I thought was...
But this is astonishing.
That's astonishing.
Was also astonishing to you.
But as the higher I went up the hierarchy, the more and more people experienced this as a contradiction. And when I got to the CEO, he was, who's the guy who launched this thing about 6 years ago, fully, to him, he lives this contradiction and paradox all the time. And what's amazing about him is he is really an emergent leader. He doesn't know the answer, he knows the question. and people try to get him to tell them what and they'll come up, well, is it this or that? And he'll go, yes. You know, and a lot of people don't like that. You know, in fact, somebody took a run at him recently, tried to get him fired, and the board got in a big kerfuffle because the board doesn't understand it either. Like, but then they look at his results and they go, you know, this organization's in the best shape it's ever been, so we're going to stick with it. But we don't get it, you know, and some people like it, some people don't. And I started looking at this guy is hugely successful on one side, like in terms of creating these businesses. That what got me interested to begin with was I had lunch with him before, first time I met him, and he claimed, you know, he said, we're hiring large numbers of intellectually developmentally disabled people and creating competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. And I said, really? Like, if you can do that, you know, that could change the world. And actually they are.